For 40 years, across the administrations of 11 different U.S. presidents, the Central Intelligence Agency attempted to assassinate one man, 638 times. On one side stood the most heavily funded, technologically advanced intelligence apparatus on the planet. On the other, a single target, Fidel Castro. The methods they deployed spanned an incredible range of lethal force. They tried traditional sniper fire. They hired organized crime syndicates. They even engineered bizarre science fiction poisons straight out of a spy novel. When a superpower fails 638 consecutive times, you have to ask a serious question. Was this man the luckiest person alive? Was the agency shockingly incompetent? Or did the target possess a defense strategy no one could see? Conducting a structural autopsy of this intelligence failure reveals exactly how a superpower was outmaneuvered. The friction started in 1959. A U.S.-backed dictator named Fulgencio Batista was abruptly ousted from power in Cuba, creating an immediate political vacuum. This new, Soviet-aligned leadership planted a hostile military power directly in America's backyard. Cuba sat a mere 150 kilometers off the southern coast of Florida. That proximity completely altered the Cold War threat matrix for Washington. By November 1961, President John F. Kennedy had lost his patience. He signed off on a massive, aggressive initiative, Operation Mongoose. This became one of the most expensive targeted operations in the agency's history. They poured millions of dollars into the effort, recruiting everyone from mafia hitmen to elite laboratory scientists. On paper, the attackers held every conceivable advantage in wealth, manpower, and technology. Over 4 decades, a complete failure rate should have been theoretically impossible. The earliest attempts fell apart because the attackers couldn't control the physical environment. Nature itself seemed to neutralize the threats. Take the milkshake plot. An operative managed to sneak a deadly poison capsule into the Habana Libre Hotel, where Castro loved to drink chocolate milkshakes. The assassin hid the pill inside a freezer, but the frozen capsule stuck to the refrigeration coil. When the frantic waiter tried to pull it loose, it ripped open, spilling the poison harmlessly into the ice. Later, operatives dug a 150-foot tunnel beneath a road Castro traveled frequently, packing it with 500 pounds of high-grade explosives. When his convoy rolled over the exact spot, the triggerman pushed the button down, but absolutely nothing happened. Rainwater had seeped into the tunnel and rusted the detonator wires. When physics didn't ruin the plan, human psychology did. The agency relied heavily on proxies who frequently broke under the pressure. Mafia hitmen were contracted for several rallies. One sniper set up across from the Sports Palace in Havana, but couldn't pull the trigger due to the density of the crowd surrounding the target. Another undercover shooter at a public event aborted his mission entirely when he realized the regular citizens standing around him were actually plainclothes security guards. The most severe psychological collapse involved Marita Lawrence, who was actually dating Castro. After her poison pills melted, Castro confronted her. He didn't arrest her. Instead, he pulled out a pistol, loaded it, handed it to her, and told her that no one could kill him. She broke down in tears and left the country the next day. These methods failed because they relied on elements that refused to be controlled. You can plan a perfect operation, but you cannot script the weather, and you cannot predict human terror. Frustrated by these chaotic variables, the agency shifted its strategy. Desperation triggered an escalation into incredibly complex, over-engineered gadgetry that detached the attackers from operational reality. Knowing Castro was an avid diver, they constructed a specialized scuba suit. The oxygen tanks were contaminated with tuberculosis bacteria, and the inner lining was treated with a deadly skin-eating fungus. They used an unwitting proxy, an American lawyer named James Donovan, to deliver it. But Donovan took one look at the infected suit and thought it looked too cheap for a head of state. He set it aside, bought a much nicer suit with his own money, and gifted that one instead, completely oblivious to the deadly payload he had left behind. With physical elimination failing time after time, their top scientist, Sidney Gottlieb, spearheaded a pivot toward character assassination. They devised a plan to sprinkle thallium sulfate powder into Castro's boots while he was on a foreign trip. The chemical would absorb into his skin and cause his iconic beard to fall out, theorizing that losing his facial hair would destroy his public image. The trip was canceled and the powder was never used. They even plotted to pump LSD gas through the ventilation system of a radio station while he was broadcasting live. The goal was to induce an on-air hallucination so the public would think he had lost his mind. Senior officials finally scrapped the idea, terrified that the technicians and guards would also inhale the gas, exposing the chemical attack. This shift from tactical strikes to psychological pranks revealed an agency blinded by its own complexity and divorced from strategic reality. But the target wasn't just relying on extraordinary luck. He was actively running an elite, hidden counterintelligence operation that was often several steps ahead of Washington. The famous exploding Cohiba cigar plot is the prime example of this invisible defense shield. The CIA packed a cigar with high-grade explosives, capable of lethal force. They handed the lethal box to a trusted agent to place on Castro's desk, but that agent was actually a double agent working for Cuban intelligence the entire time. He simply handed the box over to his real superiors. This defense reached deep into the CIA itself. Castro's agents had successfully infiltrated the agency, with some even reaching top-level positions. By the time the KGB arrived to provide formal training and superpower-level resources, the Cuban network was already reading the CIA's internal memos before they were even sent. The agency spent 40 years hunting what they believed was a vulnerable target, while their own ranks were compromised. The hunters were the ones being watched, walking blindly into a multinational intelligence network that knew every move they were about to make.